40 years building an empire, and his own family took it away. Omar arrived in New York with an old suitcase, worn clothes, and a broken soul. He asked for help on Broadway. Nobody heard him. Nobody saw him. Invisible, until a street kid stopped and spoke to him in Arabic with tenderness. That day, the richest man in the world understood something. True wealth is not measured in what you have, but in who sees you when you have lost everything. Like this, if it touched your soul. It's not just a click, it's a silent hug between those of us who have lost something. Comment how you think this story is going to end, and if you haven't subscribed yet, it costs you nothing. But for us, it means the world. Thank you for being here. The New York heat hit the Broadway asphalt like a relentless wave. It was 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in July, and the street was teeming with tourists, street vendors, street musicians, and the incessant noise of buses passing every 30 seconds. The air smelled of freshly fried donuts, mixed perfumes, and the sweat of thousands of bodies moving without ceasing. Amidst the crowd, a man walked with slow, heavy steps. Omar Al-Farsi was 62 years old, although his face, weathered by the desert sun and deep wrinkles around his eyes, made him look older. He wore a white linen shirt, wrinkled from the trip, beige pants worn at the knees, and leather sandals that had seen better days. In his right hand, he carried an old, worn, brown leather suitcase with scuffed corners and oxidized zippers. There was no gold logo, no designer brand, only a faded label with his name written by hand in Arabic. Nobody looked at him twice. 18 hours of travel from Doha to New York had left their mark on him. His shoulders stooped slightly forward. His dark eyes were reddened from lack of sleep, and every time he lifted the suitcase, a dull pain shot through his back. But it wasn't the physical tiredness that weighed on him the most. It was the silence inside his chest. 3 weeks earlier, his nephew Khalid, the son of his deceased sister, the young man he had raised like his own son, had betrayed him. A perfect legal maneuver, supported by expensive lawyers and corrupt members of the board of directors. In a matter of days, Omar had been removed from the company he had built with his own hands for 40 years. 40,000 employees, 64 properties spread across 16 countries, hotels, shopping centers, residential complexes. Everything bore his vision, his sweat, his soul, and now legally it was no longer his. Omar hadn't come to New York to hide. He had come to breathe, to find a place where no one knew who he was, where he could walk without bodyguards, without assistance, without the pressure of being the Sheikh Al-Farsi. His personal assistant, Layla, had reserved a room in a discreet hotel under a false name, Mr. Omar Hassan, just another tourist, invisible. But now, standing in the middle of Broadway, Omar didn't know where that hotel was. He approached a group of Japanese tourists who were studying a map unfolded on a cafe table. Omar cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me, do you speak English?" he asked with his marked but polite Arabic accent. The woman in the group barely looked up for a second, glanced at him from head to toe, and returned to her conversation without answering. Omar felt a small pang in his chest. He tried again. He went to a tourist information kiosk where a young man in a red shirt was helping visitors. The line was long, but Omar waited patiently. When his turn finally came, he held out a crumpled paper with the hotel's address. "Please, can you tell me how to get here?" The employee barely glanced at the paper. His eyes drifted to Omar's old suitcase, then to his worn sandals. "That hotel," he said with an ironic smile. "It's downtown, but—" He paused deliberately. "There are cheaper hostels around the Lower East Side if what you're looking for is economy." Omar felt the blood rush to his cheeks, not from anger, from shame. He nodded in silence and moved away. He tried asking a taxi driver, but the man sped off before Omar could finish the sentence. An ice cream vendor waved impatiently with his hand, signaling him to move because he was blocking the customer's view. A young couple walked past him, laughing at something on their phones, and one of them bumped into Omar's suitcase without even noticing. For the first time in decades, Omar Al-Farsi, a man who had dined with presidents, who had been honored for his philanthropy, who had employed thousands of families, felt completely invisible. He leaned against the wall of a building, under the shadow of a balcony, and closed his eyes for a moment. The noise of the city enveloped him like a tide. Voices in English, Spanish, French, Chinese, laughter, horns, Music from a violinist playing La Vie en Rose with melancholy, everything mixed in a chaos that reminded him how far he was from home. Then he heard a voice. Afwan de Halanta Bicher? Omar snapped his eyes open. In front of him, less than a meter away, was a boy, a child really. He couldn't have been more than 14. He was thin, with messy black hair and sun-tanned skin. He wore a white shirt stained with dust, overly large jeans held up by a makeshift rope belt, and torn sneakers. In his left hand, he carried a plastic bag full of empty cans. But what paralyzed Omar was not the boy's appearance. It was the language. Arabic. Clear, correct Arabic, pronounced with care. "Are you okay?" the boy repeated, this time in English, noticing the surprise on Omar's face. Omar blinked, unable to speak for a moment. His throat was tight with emotion. "You speak Arabic?" he finally asked in his native language. The boy nodded with a slight smile. "Yes, sir. I learned in the shelters. There are many Arab brothers there." He paused. "You look tired. Do you need help?" Omar felt something break inside him. He didn't know if it was relief, gratitude, or simply the weight of the last few weeks. He swallowed with difficulty. "I'm looking for this hotel," he said, showing him the paper with a trembling hand. The boy studied it for a moment, then nodded confidently. "I know it. It's a 10-minute walk. I can take you." And without waiting for an answer, the boy started walking, looking back to make sure Omar was following him. For the first time since he had arrived in New York, Omar Al-Fassi was not invisible. Someone had seen him. They walked along side streets away from the suffocating bustle of Broadway. The boy moved with the certainty of someone who knows every corner, every shortcut, every part of the city. Omar followed him in silence, studying him with curiosity. "What's your name?" he finally asked. "Leo. Leo Rodriguez," the boy replied without turning, dodging a group of tourists blocking the sidewalk. "And you?" "Omar." Leo nodded, as if the name meant nothing to him, and it probably didn't. "Where are you from, Mr. Omar?" "From the United Arab Emirates, Doha." "You must be far from home, then," Leo said, turning a corner. "Did you come for work?" Omar hesitated. How could he explain to a child that he had fled his own empire, that the nephew he loved like a son had betrayed him, that he no longer knew who he was without his company? "I came to rest," he said simply. Leo seemed to accept the answer. They continued walking in silence, passing old shops, crowded cafes, buildings with wrought-iron balconies. New York was beautiful, Omar thought. Chaotic, but beautiful. "And you?" Omar asked. "Where do you live?" Leo shrugged. "Here and there. Sometimes in the shelters, sometimes with friends, sometimes on the street." The answer was so direct, so devoid of self-pity, that Omar felt a lump in his throat. "Your parents?" "My mother died 3 years ago. My father, I don't know him." Leo pointed towards a street on the right. "This way, we're almost there." Omar observed the boy carefully. There was no bitterness in his voice, there was no resentment, just a quiet acceptance of reality. Leo collected cans for recycling, probably earning just a few dollars a day, sleeping wherever he could. And yet he had stopped to help a stranger. "Why did you do it?" Omar asked suddenly. Leo stopped and looked at him with confusion. "Do what?" "Help me." No one else stopped. No one else listened to me. The boy seemed genuinely surprised by the question. "Because you looked lost," he said simply, "and tired. My mother always said that when you see someone who needs help, you don't ask why. You just help." Omar closed his eyes for a moment. The boy's words reminded him of something he had forgotten amidst business meetings, corporate strategies, and family betrayals. Humanity. Simple, pure humanity. "Your mother was a wise woman," Omar said with a hoarse voice. Leo smiled, and for the first time, Omar saw sadness in his eyes. "She was." They continued walking. 5 minutes later, Leo stopped in front of an elegant building with a white facade and arched windows. A discreet sign read, "The Hudson View Hotel." "Here it is," Leo announced. Omar looked at the building, then at the boy. "Thank you, Leo, truly." He reached into his pocket looking for money, but Leo held up his hands. "No, sir. I don't need payment. I just wanted to help." Omar felt his chest tighten. When was the last time someone helped him without expecting anything in return? When was the last time someone saw him as a human being, not as a business opportunity? Before he could answer, Leo was already walking away, waving goodbye. Omar watched him disappear into the crowd, a thin boy with a bag of cans and a heart bigger than the whole city. Then he took a deep breath and entered the hotel. The lobby of the Hudson View Hotel was elegant, but not ostentatious. Beige marble floors, discreet chandeliers, brown leather furniture. Behind the reception desk, a young woman in her 30s was typing on a computer. Her name, according to the gold plate on her lapel, was Sarah Johnson. Omar approached with his worn suitcase. "Good afternoon," he said in English with a marked accent. "I have a reservation under the name Omar Hassan." Sarah looked up. Her eyes scanned Omar from head to toe in less than 2 seconds. The wrinkled shirt, the old sandals, the battered suitcase. Her expression subtly changed. It wasn't open hostility. It was something worse. Indifference mixed with disdain. "Hassan?" she repeated, as if the name seemed suspicious to her. She typed unhurriedly. "I don't see any reservation under that name." "It was made by my assistant 2 weeks ago," Omar insisted, feeling his patience begin to wear thin. "A single room for 7 days." Sarah clicked her tongue, continuing to type. "Nothing appears here. Do you have any proof?" Omar reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. As he searched for the confirmation email, he heard a voice behind him. "Any problem, Sarah?" A man in his mid-40s, in an immaculate grey suit and slicked back hair, approached with a firm step. His badge read, "Richard Allen, General Manager." "This gentleman says he has a reservation, but it doesn't appear in the system," Sarah explained in a professional but cold tone. Richard looked at Omar with the same quick assessment. Old suitcase, simple clothes, posture hunched with tiredness. "Under whose name is the reservation?" he asked with mechanical courtesy. "Omar Hassan," Omar repeated, showing him the phone with the confirmation email. Richard didn't even look at the screen. "Sir, this is a 4-star hotel. Our rates are $180 per night, plus taxes. If the reservation doesn't appear in the system, I cannot make exceptions." He paused deliberately. "But if you're looking for something more affordable, there are very cheap guest houses in the Lower East Side neighborhood. I can give you some addresses." The silence that followed was dense. Omar did not respond immediately. He just observed the manager with a chilling calm. He had built an empire listening to tones of voice, reading micro-expressions, detecting hypocrisy, and he knew exactly what was happening. They were judging him not for who he was, but for how he looked. "I understand," Omar finally said with a quiet voice. "May I speak with the owner of the hotel?" Richard smiled condescendingly. "The owner is not in New York. This hotel was acquired 6 months ago by an international investment group. If you wish to file a formal complaint, I can give you an email address." Omar nodded slowly. His heart was pounding, but his face remained serene. "That won't be necessary." Just then, the hotel door opened. Leo ran in, holding a leather wallet. "Mr. Omar," he shouted, "you dropped this outside." All eyes turned to the boy. Sarah frowned. Richard stepped forward with a stern expression. "Kid, you can't." "Be in here," Richard said in an authoritative tone. "This is a private hotel, not a shelter. Leave immediately before I call security." Leo stopped abruptly, confused. He looked at Omar, then at Richard. "I just came to return." "I said leave," Richard repeated, now louder. "You're scaring the customers." Omar felt something ignite within him. It wasn't anger. It was absolute clarity. He walked slowly to Leo, took the wallet from his hands, and put a hand on his shoulder. "Thank you, Leo. Stay. Here for a moment, please." Then he turned to Richard with glacial calm. "Before you throw me out too," Omar said in a soft but firm voice, "allow me to introduce myself correctly." He took a gold identification card from his wallet and placed it on the counter. "My name is Omar Al-Farsi, owner of Al-Farsi Global Investments, and for the past 6 months, owner of this hotel." The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah turned pale. Richard opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Omar continued with a quiet but relentless voice. "This boy was the only person in this entire city who treated me with dignity today. He helped me when I was lost. He guided me here without expecting anything in return. And you," he paused deliberately, "you threw him out like a criminal." Richard tried to speak, his voice trembling. "Mr. Al-Farsi, I didn't know that." Exactly, Omar interrupted. You didn't know, and that's why you treated me like trash. He turned to Sarah. You are fired. Collect your things and leave the hotel in 30 minutes. Then he looked at Richard. You too. Richard stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of pleading. Mr. Al-Farsi, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Omar interrupted firmly. I saw everything I needed to see. Sarah had tears in her eyes. Please, sir, I have 2 children. I can't lose this job. Omar looked at her sternly. You should have thought about that before humiliating someone for their appearance. He turned to Leo, who was watching the scene with wide eyes, not entirely understanding what was happening. Leo, come with me. The boy followed him, still confused, as Omar walked toward the office area behind the counter. He found a small meeting room and sat down, signaling Leo to do the same. Mr. Omar, what's going on? Leo asked in a small voice. Omar looked at him intently. How old are you? 14. Do you go to school? Leo lowered his gaze. No, for 2 years. I had to work. Omar nodded slowly, as if making a monumental decision. Leo, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Understood? The boy nodded. If you had the chance to change your life, to study, to have a place to live, to not have to collect cans in the streets, would you do it? Leo's eyes filled with tears. Sir, I don't understand. Answer the question. Yes, Leo whispered. Yes, I would. Omar took a deep breath. Then listen to me carefully. I'm going to offer you something. It's not charity, it's an opportunity, but you have to promise me that you will seize it. Leo nodded, unable to speak. I'm going to pay for your complete school scholarship. You're going back to school. You're going to finish your studies. I'm going to get you a place to live, something safe and decent. And when you finish school, if you want to, you can work at my company. But only if you prove you deserve to be there. Understood? Leo broke down crying. He couldn't control the tears falling down his cheeks. Why me? He stammered. I'm nobody. Omar felt his own voice break. Because today, when everyone ignored me, when they treated me as if I were invisible, you were the only one who saw me, the only one who stopped, the only one who offered help without expecting anything in return. He paused. That is worth more than all the gold in my country, Leo. That is humanity. And humanity is the only thing that truly matters. In this world. Leo wiped his tears with the back of his hand. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Omar smiled for the first time since he had arrived in New York. Don't thank me yet. This is just the beginning. He got up and walked back to the lobby, where Sarah and Richard were still standing, petrified, surrounded by curious glances from other employees who had come out to hear the commotion. Omar raised his voice so everyone could hear. Starting. Today, I am implementing a new policy in all my hotels in America. Every employee will receive mandatory training in empathy and respect towards guests, regardless of their appearance, origin, or economic situation. Anyone who violates this will be dismissed immediately. No exceptions. He looked at every face present. This boy, he pointed to Leo, taught me more about hospitality in 10 minutes than you have in your entire careers. Think about that. Then, with Leo by his side, Omar Al-Farsi went up to his room. For the first time in a long time, he felt he had done something right. The morning arrived with a soft light filtering through the white curtains of the room. Omar woke up slowly, disoriented for a moment, until he remembered where he was. New York, far from Doha, far from Khalid, far from the betrayal. He got up and walked to the window. From the 5th floor, he could see the rooftops of the city, the streets that were beginning to fill with life, the clear blue sky, without a single cloud. He felt something strange in his chest. Peace. He didn't remember the last time he had felt peace. He took a long shower, dressed in clean but equally simple clothes, a blue cotton shirt and khaki pants, and went down to the hotel dining room. The staff looked at him with a mixture of respect and nervousness. A young waitress approached, almost running. Good morning, Mr. Al-Farsi. Would you like breakfast? Yes, thank you. Black coffee and something light. Right away. Sir? Omar sat by a window and took out his phone. He had 17 missed calls from Layla, his assistant, 3 messages from lawyers, 2 from his older brother in Abu Dhabi, none from Khalid. He turned off the phone, He hadn't come to New York to continue being the man he was. He had come to remember who he had been before he became that man. While drinking his coffee, he saw Leo enter the dining room. The boy had spent the night in a hotel room at Omar's insistence. Now he was wearing new clothes, a simple white shirt and clean jeans that Omar had asked to be gotten for him. Leo approached timidly. "Good morning, Mr. Omar." "Good morning, Leo. Sit down, please." The boy sat down, looking around in awe. "I've never had breakfast in a place like this." Omar smiled. "Get used to it." They ate breakfast together in comfortable silence. Omar watched Leo, seeing how the boy ate slowly, savoring every bite as if it were a treasure. He reminded him of himself, decades ago, when he had nothing. "Leo," he finally said, "I need you to understand something. What I offered you yesterday is real, but it won't be easy. You will have to study hard. You will have to work harder than the others. Are you willing?" Leo looked up, determination in his eyes. "Yes, sir, I am." "Good. Then today we begin." That same afternoon, Omar called a trusted American lawyer, recommended by Layla. His name was Robert Mendoza, a 60-year-old man with an impeccable reputation. Robert arrived at the hotel 2 hours later with a leather briefcase and a serious expression. "Mr. Alfarsi, it's an honor." They sat in the hotel's small private office. Omar got straight to the point. "I need help enrolling a child in school. I also need legal arrangements for him to have safe housing and educational support." Robert opened his notebook. "Is he a relative?" "No. He is someone who helped me when I needed it most." Robert didn't ask any more questions. He took notes for half an hour as Omar explained Leo's situation. "There are some legal complexities," Robert finally said, "but nothing that can't be resolved. I will need access to the child's records, identity documents, school history. Leo has no family. He has no legal guardians." Robert nodded. "Then we will need special permits from social services. I can take care of it, but it will take time." "Do it as quickly as possible," Omar said. That night, Omar explained everything to Leo. The boy listened attentively, nodding, occasionally his eyes shining. "Does it mean I'll be able to go to a real school?" he asked. "Yes, and not only that. You're going to live in a safe place. You're going to have clothes, food, books, everything you need." Leo was silent for a long moment. Then, with a trembling voice, he asked, "Why are you doing all this for me? You don't even know me." Omar looked at the boy with tenderness. "Because when I was your age, someone helped me too. An old merchant in Doha gave me my first job when everyone else closed the door on me. He taught me that wealth is not measured in money, but in what you do for others." He paused. "You reminded me of that, and now it's my turn to return that kindness." A week later, Robert Mendoza managed to arrange a meeting with the principal of the public school closest to the hotel. His name was Mr. John Guzman, a 50-year-old man with thick glasses and a perpetually tired expression. Omar, Leo, and Robert entered his office. Mr. Guzman received them politely, but his skepticism was palpable. "Mr. Alfarsi," he said, studying the papers Robert had sent him, "I understand you want to enroll this young man in our school, but there are protocols. Leo has been out of the educational system for 2 years. He will need placement exams, psychological evaluations." "I am willing to pay whatever is necessary," Omar interrupted. Mr. Guzman looked at him coldly. "This is not a matter of money, sir. It's a matter of ability. Leo will have to prove that he can keep up with his peers." Omar nodded. "I understand. When can he take the exams?" "Next week. But I must warn you, if he doesn't pass, I won't be able to admit him." Omar looked at Leo, who was pale but calm. "He will. I trust him." For the next 7 days, Omar hired 3 private tutors to prepare Leo. Math, language, science. The boy studied from 8 in the morning until 6 in the evening, with short breaks to eat. At first, it was difficult. Leo had forgotten a lot, but he had something many students didn't: hunger. Hunger to learn, to improve, to prove he deserved this opportunity. The day of the exam arrived. Leo entered the school with trembling hands. Omar waited outside, pacing for 3 hours. When Leo came out, his eyes were red, but he was smiling. "I did my best." Omar put a hand on his shoulder. "That's all that matters." 3 days later, they received the call from Mr. Guzman. Leo had passed. Leo's first day of class was an event Omar would never forget. The boy left the hotel dressed in his new uniform: white shirt, navy blue pants, shiny black shoes. with a backpack full of books and a huge smile that seemed too big to contain. "How do I look?" he asked. "Like a student," Omar replied proudly. They walked together to the school. At the door, Leo turned to Omar. "Thank you," he said simply, "for everything." Omar felt a lump in his throat. "Don't disappoint me." "I won't." And he went in. Omar watched him disappear among other children, mixing in, laughing, talking. For the first time, Leo seemed normal, like any other 14-year-old boy. As he walked back to the hotel, Omar felt something he hadn't felt in months: purpose. Over the next few weeks, Omar began to get more involved in the direct management of the hotel. Not because he wanted to return to being a corporate mogul, but because he needed to do something useful with his time. He implemented small but significant changes: staff training on dignified treatment, clear policies against discrimination, feedback sessions where employees could express their concerns, and most importantly, he began hiring people that other hotels rejected: immigrants, rehabilitated homeless people, young people with no experience. The Hudson View Hotel began to transform, not only in aesthetics but in spirit. One afternoon, while reviewing reports in his room, he received a call from Layla. "Omar," she said in a tense voice, "Khalid has called a board meeting. He wants to officially dismiss you from all positions." Omar closed his eyes. "Let him." "What?" "Omar, this is your legacy, your company." "It's no longer my company, Layla. Legally, it's not. And you know what? It's okay. Maybe it's time to build something new." There was a long silence. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." He hung up the phone and looked out the window. Outside, life continued. New York was still vibrant, chaotic, beautiful. And for the first time in a long time, Omar felt alive. A month after the incident at the hotel, Omar received a surprise visit. It was a woman in her 50s, elegantly dressed, with black hair pulled back in an impeccable bun. She introduced herself as Patricia Sanders, Regional Director of American Hospitality. "Mr. Al-Farsi," she said in a firm voice, "I have come because I received very interesting reports about what you are doing at this hotel." Omar invited her to sit in the small cafe in the lobby. "What kind of reports?" Patricia took an iPad from her bag. "Since you implemented your new policies, customer satisfaction has increased by 32%. Online reviews have drastically improved, and most notably, you have hired 17 people who were in vulnerable situations, and all of them are performing their duties exceptionally." Omar listened in silence. "But there's something else," Patricia continued. "One of your employees, a young man named Michael Angelo, who was homeless 2 months ago, has just been named Employee of the Month by the guests. They say he is the most attentive, the kindest, the one who truly cares." Omar smiled. "Michael Angelo understands what it means to be invisible. That's why he never makes anyone else invisible." Patricia looked at him with admiration. "Mr. Al-Farsi, I have been in this industry for 25 years, and I have never seen anything like this. What you are doing is not just good for business, it is changing lives." "That's the point," Omar said. "Business is secondary, lives come first." Patricia closed her iPad. "There are other hotel chains in America that are observing what you're doing. They want to know if they can replicate your model." Omar leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. "It's not a model, it's a philosophy, and it can't be replicated if it's not truly felt." That night, while having dinner with Leo, something they did twice a week, he told him about Patricia's visit. "See," Leo said proudly, "you are changing things." "No," Omar corrected. "We are changing things. None of this would have happened if you hadn't stopped to help me that day." Leo smiled, but then his expression turned serious. "Mr. Omar, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you leave your company? I mean, you built all that. How can you just let it go?" Omar took a deep breath. "Because I realized I had lost something much more important than money or power. I had lost my humanity. I surrounded myself with people who only saw me as a source of wealth. Even my own family betrayed me." He paused. "Coming to New York, being treated as invisible, meeting you, reminded me who I really was, and I prefer to be that man than the mogul everyone expected me to be." Leo nodded slowly. "I think that's very brave." Omar smiled sadly. "Or very foolish. I still don't know." 2 months after his arrival in New York, Omar received an email that chilled him. It was from Khalid. Uncle Omar, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. I will be in New York tomorrow. Please give me a chance to explain everything. Khalid Omar read the message 3 times. He felt a mixture of emotions, rage, pain, curiosity, but above all, tiredness. He replied briefly, "The Hudson View Hotel, 3 p.m. The next day at 3 o'clock, Khalid entered the hotel lobby. He wore a designer grey suit, had a gold watch on his wrist, and walked with the confidence of someone who is accustomed to doors being opened for him. When he saw Omar sitting in the cafe, dressed in his simple shirt and old pants, something changed in his expression. Surprise, confusion. He approached slowly. "Uncle Omar." Omar did not stand up. He just pointed to the chair in front of him. "Sit down." Khalid obeyed. For a long moment neither spoke. Finally, Khalid broke the silence. "I came to apologize." Omar looked at him without expression. "Apologize for what exactly? For stealing my company? For betraying my trust? For forgetting that I raised you like a son?" Khalid lowered his gaze. "For everything. I know there's no excuse. I was greedy. I was stupid. I listened to the wrong people." He looked up, his eyes moist. "But I swear I regret it. Every day. The company isn't the same without you. The employees miss you. The partners miss you. I miss you." Omar felt something break inside him, but it wasn't pain. It was liberation. "Khalid," he said in a quiet voice, "I forgive you." The young man raised his head hopefully. "Really?" "Yes, but that doesn't mean I'm coming back." The hope in Khalid's eyes faded. "Uncle, listen to me carefully," Omar interrupted. "I built that company from the ground up. I loved it. I gave it 40 years of my life. But in the process, I forgot who I was. I forgot why I had built it in the first place." He paused. "It wasn't to get rich, it was to give dignity to people, to create opportunities, to change lives." He leaned forward. "And that's exactly what I'm doing now, here, in this hotel, with these people. I'm remembering who I truly am." Khalid had tears on his cheeks. "Then you're never coming back? Not to that world, not to that version of myself." Omar smiled sadly. "But I wish you the best, Khalid, truly. Learn from your mistakes. Be better than I was." He stood up. The conversation was over. Khalid also stood up, wiping his tears. "I love you, Uncle, and I love you. But sometimes love means letting go." Khalid nodded, turned around, and left the hotel. Omar watched him go, feeling that a chapter of his life had definitively closed. And for the first time, he didn't feel sadness. He felt peace. 3 months later, the Hudson View Hotel won the award for Best Humanitarian Experience in Hospitality, given by the American Hotel Association. The ceremony took place in an elegant ballroom in Chicago, with over 200 attendees from all over America. Omar didn't want to go, but Leo insisted. "You have to go," the boy said. "What you're doing is important. People need to know that it's possible to do things differently." So they went together, Omar in his simplest suit, Leo in his first formal suit, bought especially for the occasion. When Omar's name was called to receive the award, the room stood up and applauded. Omar walked onto the stage, received the crystal plaque and stood at the microphone. He looked at the audience, expectant faces, powerful executives, owners of multi-million-dollar hotel chains. 4 months ago, he began, I arrived in New York, dressed as an ordinary tourist, tired, lost, invisible. No one saw me, no one heard me, until a 14-year-old boy who had nothing stopped to help me. He paused. That boy taught me something I had forgotten, that true wealth is not in financial statements or corporate titles. It is in how we treat people, especially those who cannot give us anything in return. He pointed to Leo, who was sitting in the front row. That boy's name is Leo Rodriguez, Omar said, his voice slightly cracking. And this award is not mine, it's his, and it belongs to every person who has been invisible at some point in their life, to every employee I hired because no one else would, to every customer who was treated with respect when others despised them. He held up the plaque. Hospitality is not a business, it is an act of humanity, and as long as we keep remembering that, there will always be hope. The applause was deafening. 6 months after the day Omar arrived in New York, the Hudson View Hotel had completely transformed, not only in profitability, which had increased by 40%, but in culture. Employees arrived smiling, Customers wrote emotional reviews about how human the place felt, and most importantly, 17 people who had been homeless now had stable employment, housing and dignity. One afternoon, while reviewing reports in his room, Omar received an unexpected visit. It was Michelangelo, the former homeless employee who was now the hotel's most valued receptionist. He was 32, but the premature wrinkles around his eyes told the story of years sleeping outdoors. However, there was something different about him now. A light in his gaze, an upright posture, dignity. "Mr. Omar," he said nervously, "can I talk to you for a moment?" "Of course, Michelangelo, sit down." The young man sat down, twisting his hands in his lap. He wore the hotel uniform impeccably ironed. The badge with his name shone under the office light. "I wanted to thank you," he began with a trembling voice, "not just for giving me this job, but for—" He paused, searching for the right words. "For giving me back something I thought I had lost forever." "What is that?" Omar asked softly. "My dignity." Michelangelo's eyes filled with tears. "6 months ago I was sleeping under the Brooklyn Bridge, convinced that my life had no value, that I was invisible, that it didn't matter if I lived or died." Omar felt his chest tighten. He knew that feeling all too well. "And then I came here," Michelangelo continued, "dirty, desperate, expecting to be thrown out like everywhere else. But you looked me in the eyes. You listened to me. You gave me a chance." The tears started to fall down his cheeks. "You showed me that I was still worth something." Omar stood up and put a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Michelangelo, your life always had value. I just gave you a chance to prove it to yourself." "Well, it worked." Michelangelo wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "I have an apartment now. Small, but it's mine. I've started talking to my sister again after 5 years. I'm saving money, and for the first time in a long time, I have hope." He stood up with renewed determination. "And now I want to do the same for others. I want to help more people like me, like you helped me. What do you have in mind?" "A structured program, where the hotel hires homeless people, gives them professional training, psychological support, and a real opportunity to rebuild their lives. Not charity, opportunity, like you did with me." Omar leaned back in his chair, studying the young man with admiration. Here was living proof that his philosophy worked, that dignity could transform lives. "It's a brilliant idea, Michelangelo, but it will be difficult. It will require resources, structure, patience." "I know, but it's worth it. Every life is worth it." Omar smiled. "Then let's do it. You will be the program coordinator." Over. The next few weeks, Omar and Michelangelo worked together to develop the program. They called it Second Chance. It wasn't just a nice name. It was a commitment. They established a 3-phase process. Phase 1, stabilization, temporary housing, clothing, basic medical care. Phase 2, training, hospitality training, social skills, psychological support. Phase 3, integration, employment at the hotel with continuous mentorship. The first group of candidates arrived on a Monday morning. There were 5 people, 3 men and 2 women, all with different stories but with the same common denominator. They had been invisible. Omar personally welcomed them in the conference room. "I know how you feel," he told them in a firm but kind voice. "I know what it's like to be invisible, to be ignored, to be judged by how you look instead of who you are." He paused. "But here, in this place, you are seen. You matter. And if you are willing to work hard, if you are willing to believe in yourselves, I promise you will have a real opportunity." One of the women, named Rose, timidly raised her hand. "Why are you doing this?" she asked in a barely audible voice. "Why are you helping us?" Omar looked her directly in the eyes. "Because someone helped me when I needed it most, and I learned that the only way to honor that gift is to share it with others." Over the next 3 months, the Second Chance program took off. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, relapses, moments of doubt. But there were also triumphs. Rose, who had lived on the streets for 2 years after losing her job and family, now worked in the cleaning department. She arrived early every day, worked with impeccable dedication, and always had a smile for the guests. James, not the former manager who was fired, but a new James, a 40-year-old man who had become homeless after a personal crisis, became a kitchen assistant. His passion for gastronomy, dormant for years, reawakened, and every story was a fee. Reminder of why Omar had come to New York. Not to hide, but to find himself. A year after his arrival in New York, on a spring afternoon where the sun painted the streets gold, Omar was sitting in the same cafe in the lobby where everything had begun. The place felt different now. The walls were still the same, the furniture was the same, but there was something intangible that had changed. A warmth, a humanity that permeated the air. Leo, who was now 15 and had grown several inches, entered the cafe with quick steps. His school uniform was immaculate. He carried a backpack full of books, and on his face shone a huge smile that seemed too big to contain. "Mr. Omar," he said, sitting down across from him with barely contained enthusiasm, "I have news." "Good news?" Omar asked, although the answer was obvious from the boy's expression. "The best." Leo took an envelope from his backpack. "I was accepted into the International Academic Exchange Program. I'm going to study for a semester in London at one of the best schools in England." Omar felt a mixture of pride and a pang of sadness. He took the envelope, read the acceptance letter, and smiled, even though his heart ached a little. "This is incredible, Leo. I'm so proud of you, I have no words." Leo looked down and his smile faded a little. "But I don't want to leave and leave you alone." Omar placed the letter on the table and leaned forward. "Leo, look at me." The boy looked up. "I'm not alone. I've never been more accompanied in my life. I have Michelangelo, Rose, the whole hotel team. I have purpose, I have peace." He paused. "And you need to fly. That was always the plan. To give you wings so you could reach heights I never dreamed of. But you changed my life, Mr. Omar. You took me off the streets. You gave me education, a home, hope." Leo's voice cracked. "I don't know how to thank you for all that." Omar felt his own eyes well up. He stood up, walked around the table, and hugged the boy. "You've already thanked me more than you can imagine. Every time you study hard, every time you help someone else, every time you refuse to forget where you came from, you are thanking me." He pulled away and placed his hands on the boy's shoulders. "Go to London, learn, grow, become the man I know you can be, and then come back and help others as I helped you. That is the only thank you I need." Leo nodded, wiping his tears with the back of his hand. I promise I won't disappoint. You never have." That night after Leo left, Omar received a call from Layla. His assistant, who had remained loyal to him despite everything, sounded tense. "Omar, there's news from Doha." "What happened?" "The company is in serious trouble. Khalid can't handle it. He doesn't have your vision, your experience, your human touch." She paused. "The partners are divided. The stock dropped 30% in the last 6 months. There are rumors of a possible forced sale." Omar closed his eyes. He should feel satisfaction, vindication, but he only felt sadness. "And why are you telling me this, Layla?" "Because the board wants you to come back. They are willing to offer you very favorable conditions. Total control, public apologies, whatever you want." Omar walked to the window of his room. Outside, the lights of New York flickered like earthly stars. "I'm not going back, Layla." "I know," she replied softly. "I just thought you should know, that you were right, that your way of doing things was the right one. My way of doing things almost destroyed me, Layla. It made me forget who I was. It cost me my humanity." He took a deep breath. "No, that world is no longer mine. I built something new here, something better. Are you happy?" Layla asked after a long silence. Omar thought about the question. He thought about Leo, about Michelangelo, about Rose and James, and everyone else whose lives had changed. He thought about mornings walking through New York without bodyguards. He thought about real conversations with real people. He thought about sleeping in peace every night. "Yes," he finally said, "I think for the first time in decades, I am genuinely happy." "Then I'm happy for you, my friend." After hanging up, Omar remained looking out the window for a long time. The city continued its nightly rhythm. Taxis passing, people laughing on the terraces, music filtering from the bars. Life. Simple, beautiful, chaotic life. And he was a part of it. Not as a mogul observing from his ivory tower, but as a human being walking among other human beings. The next day, Omar made a decision. He was going to expand the Hudson View Hotel model, not for ambition, but because the Second Chance program was working better than anyone had imagined. In 3 months, They had helped 22 more people, each with their own story, each with their own path to redemption. And Omar knew there were many more people out there, invisible, forgotten, waiting for someone to see them. He called Michelangelo to his office. "I've been thinking," he told him. "What would you say if we expanded the program to other hotels?" Michelangelo's eyes lit up. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I want to open 4 more hotels in America in the next 2 years, all following the same model: hospitality with humanity, employment with dignity, real opportunities for people who have been forgotten." Michelangelo was speechless for a moment. Then, slowly a smile spread across his face. "That would be incredible. We could help hundreds of people. Thousands, eventually," Omar corrected. "But I need you to understand something, Michelangelo. This is not going to be easy. There will be resistance. There will be people who say it's impossible, that it's not profitable, that we're crazy. I know, but it's worth it. Right?" Omar nodded. "More than anything else I've ever done in my life." 18 months after that day on Broadway, Omar Al-Farsi stood on the stage of an elegant conference hall in San Francisco. The auditorium lights were dimmed, leaving only a spotlight on him. In front of his eyes, 250 leaders of the American hotel industry watched him with expectant attention. Executives from international chains, owners of boutique hotels, millionaire investors, all dressed in impeccable suits, sitting in red velvet chairs. He had been invited to speak at the American Summit on Sustainable Hospitality, not because he was the richest businessman. He no longer was. Not because he had the largest empire, he no longer had it, but because he had demonstrated something that many believed impossible, that you could be profitable and human at the same time. Omar wore a simple but elegant dark grey suit, no ostentatious jewelry, no gold watches. His hair, now more grey than black, was combed back. The wrinkles around his eyes had deepened, but there was something different in his gaze, a peace that wasn't there 18 months ago, a clarity that came from having found his true purpose. He took a deep breath and began. 2 years ago, his voice was clear, firm, but charged with contained emotion. "I arrived in New York as a completely broken man. I had lost the company I built over 40 years. My own family had betrayed me. And worst of all, I felt completely invisible." He paused, letting the words settle in the silence of the auditorium. Some in the audience leaned forward. "I arrived on Broadway after 18 hours of travel. Tired, lost, looking for help." His voice became more intimate, as if he were telling a secret. "I tried asking for directions. Once, twice, 10 times. No one heard me. No one saw me. They judged me by my old clothes, my worn suitcase, my foreign accent. To them I was a nobody, less than nobody." Several in the audience shifted uncomfortably in their seats. A woman in the 3rd row looked down. "I was laughed at for asking for something more. Affordable," Omar continued. "I was treated like trash in a hotel that, ironically, I myself had bought months earlier without anyone knowing." A murmur ran through the room. But then, Omar allowed a small smile to touch his lips. A 14-year-old boy who lived on the street stopped. Not because I was important, not because I could give him something in return, not because he knew who I was, but simply because he saw another human being who needed help. Omar pointed toward the back of the room where Leo was sitting in the last row. Now 16 years old, the boy wore an impeccable navy blue blazer and a white shirt. His transformation was evident not only in his clothes, but in his posture, in the confidence of his gaze. Beside him were Michelangelo, Rose, James, and 10 other members of the Second Chance program, all dressed with dignity. "That boy's name is Leo Rodriguez," Omar said, his voice slightly breaking. "And he taught me something I had forgotten in 40 years of building an empire. That true wealth is not measured in financial statements, but in transformed lives. That true success is not in how many buildings you own, but in how many people you help get up when they have fallen." He walked slowly across the stage, each step measured, each word chosen carefully. "From that day, I made a decision. I was not going back to my old life. I was not going to recover my company. I was not going to fight for power or prestige." He paused dramatically. "Instead, I was going to build something different, something that truly mattered." He held up his hand, showing his fingers. 5 hotels in America: Los Angeles, Miami, Austin, Boston, and of course New York, all following the same model: hospitality with humanity, employment with dignity, real opportunities for real people. His voice gained strength. And yes, they are profitable, very profitable. Our numbers exceed the industry average by 25%. Our customer satisfaction indexes are at 93%. Our employees have the lowest turnover rate in the sector. He paused. But not for the reasons you think. Omar stopped in the center of the stage, looking directly at the audience. They are profitable because the employees who have been rescued from invisibility, from the streets, from oblivion, work with a dedication that money could never buy. They work with gratitude, with passion, with a sense of purpose that transforms every interaction with guests. His voice softened. Because customers feel the difference when they are welcomed by people who understand, truly understand the value of human dignity. He extended both hands toward the audience. 142 people taken off the streets in 18 months. 142 lives completely transformed. 142 families reunited. 142 futures rebuilt from scratch. The silence in the room was absolute. Not a cough, not a whisper. Just complete attention. And each of those 142 people has taught me something invaluable. Omar began to walk again. Rose, who is back there, taught me about resilience. She lost everything, slept in ATM vestibules for 2 years, and yet she never lost her kindness. Michelangelo taught me about true gratitude, James about the power of the second chance, Carla about the courage to start over at 50. He stopped, and when he spoke again, his voice was charged with pure emotion. And Leo. Leo taught me that a simple act of kindness can change the world, literally, because that boy who stopped to help a stranger on Broadway triggered a wave of transformation that now touches 142 lives and is still growing. Omar returned to the center of the stage. His next statement was direct, unadorned. I tell you all this not to brag, not for you to applaud me. I tell you this to prove something that many of you believe is impossible, that yes, you can, that you can have explosive financial success without sacrificing your humanity, that you can build empires without forgetting the people who build them, that you can be rich in money and rich in soul at the same time. He spread his arms to his sides. You don't have to choose between profitability and compassion, between profits and dignity, between success and humanity. You can have both. I am the living proof. He made a final pause, letting his words resonate. The question is not whether you can do it. The question is, will you have the courage to try? Will you have the valor to see the invisible people who pass in front of your hotels every day? Will you have the humility to admit that maybe, just maybe, they can teach you something? The room exploded in applause. It wasn't polite applause. It was an immediate, thunderous standing ovation that lasted almost 5 full minutes. Some in the audience had tears in their eyes. A woman in the front row openly wiped her cheeks. Omar stepped down from the stage, but instead of heading to the VIP area where organizers and journalists were waiting, he walked directly to the back row where Leo and his team were. How was I? He asked with a smile, like a student seeking approval from his teacher. Leo stood up and hugged him tightly. Incredible! Mom would have been so proud of you. It was the first time Leo had mentioned his mother without his voice breaking. Only pure love and gratitude. Michelangelo also stood up, tears streaming down his face. Mr. Omar, you just changed this industry. I know it. I feel it. Rose took Omar's hand in hers. Thank you for seeing us when no one else did. The next 30 minutes were a whirlwind. Dozens of business people surrounded Omar, wanting to know more about his model. He exchanged cards, promised follow-up calls, accepted invitations to speak at other events. But when he finally managed to escape, he met Leo in the convention center lobby. Come on, he told him. I need to walk. They went out together onto Union Square in San Francisco. The afternoon was perfect. The sun filtered through the trees, creating patterns of light and shadow on the pavement. Street artists painted portraits. Musicians played soft melodies. Tourists strolled with ice creams in their hands. They walked in silence for several minutes, simply absorbing the life flowing around them. Mr. Omar, Leo finally said, can I ask you something I've wanted to ask you for months? Always. Do you ever regret it? Leo's voice was careful. Leaving everything behind, I mean. Your company, your power, your billions, my empire. Omar smiled, stopping to look at an artist painting a watercolor of Alcatraz. No, Leo, not for a second do I regret it. But how can you be so sure? You owned 64 properties. You had 40,000 employees. You dined with presidents. You were miserable, Omar interrupted softly. I was absolutely miserable, and I didn't even know it. Leo looked at him with confusion. Omar turned to him, placing both hands on the boy's shoulders. That empire made me rich in money, but it left me completely empty in spirit. I built magnificent buildings, but I forgot to build real relationships. I earned fortunes, but I lost my soul. I had thousands of employees, but no true friends. He paused. And this life, this simple life of 5 hotels and 142 people, made me whole. It gave me back to myself. Leo nodded slowly, as if a final puzzle piece had just clicked into place. They continued walking until the sun began to set. On the train back to New York, as the American landscape sped past the window, fields of corn, small white towns with old churches, distant mountains, Omar's phone vibrated. It was a message from Khalid. Uncle Omar, I just watched your entire conference on YouTube. I've watched it 3 times. You were right about absolutely everything. I am so sorry. I am trying to do things better now, implementing changes, following your example. I hope one day you can truly forgive me. Omar read the message 4 times. 2 years ago, those words would have filled him with anger or bitterness or a sharp sense of vindication. Now, he only felt genuine compassion. He slowly wrote his reply. Khalid, I already forgave you. A long time ago. We all make mistakes. The important thing is to learn from them. I wish you the best. Always. Never forget. Power without humanity is tyranny. Success without compassion is emptiness. Build something that matters. I love you, nephew. He put away the phone and looked out the window. Leo was asleep in the seat next to him, his head resting against the glass. Omar felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost hurt him physically. This boy had saved his life, not in a dramatic or heroic way, but with a simple act of kindness when Omar needed it most. When the train arrived at Grand Central Station in New York, it was already night. The city lights shone, like earthly promises in the darkness. Leo and Omar walked together from the station to the hotel, enjoying the cool night air. When they arrived at the Hudson View Hotel, Michelangelo was waiting for them at the entrance with a serious but hopeful expression. Mr. Omar, there's someone who needs to meet you. Omar raised an eyebrow. At this hour? Michelangelo nodded. He says it's urgent. He saw your conference on the internet. He needs help. Omar exchanged a look with Leo, then followed Michelangelo inside the lobby. There, sitting on one of the leather sofas, was a man in his 50s. He wore worn but clean clothes. He carried a battered backpack. His grey hair was messy. He had deep, dark circles under his eyes, and his hands were trembling slightly. But what most struck Omar was his gaze, the lost, desperate, hope-starved look of someone who had been invisible for too long. The man stood up when Omar approached. Mr. Al-Farsi. His voice was hoarse, as if he hadn't used it much lately. Yes, Omar replied softly. And you are? Anthony Ruiz. The man held out a trembling hand. Forgive me for coming like this, unannounced, but I saw your conference in a cafe with free Wi-Fi, and I thought maybe... His voice broke. He couldn't continue. Omar took his hand firmly and warmly. It's okay, Anthony. Breathe. You are in the right place. Tears began to fall down Anthony's cheeks. 2 years ago I lost my job, then my apartment. My wife took my children. I've been on the streets ever since, and every day I feel more invisible, like I don't exist. He looked at Omar with desperate eyes. But you said in the conference that you see the invisible people, that you give them a second chance, and I need a second chance, sir, just one. Omar felt something move deeply within his chest. This man was him 2 years ago. He was Leo 18 months ago. He was Michelangelo. He was Rose. He was all of them. Anthony, Omar said in a firm but gentle voice, when was the last time you ate something warm? The man blinked, surprised by the question. I don't remember. Omar turned to the reception staff. Please prepare room 304 and ask the kitchen to send a full dinner. Then he looked back at Anthony. You're going to stay here tonight. You're going to shower, eat, sleep in a real bed. And tomorrow morning, Michelangelo here," he pointed to his coordinator, "is going to explain our program to you. If you are willing to work hard, if you are willing to believe in yourself again, we are going to give you that second chance you ask for." Anthony broke down. He literally fell to his knees, sobbing. "Thank you. Thank you. You don't know what this means." Omar knelt beside him, putting a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, I do, Anthony. Believe me, I do know." 2 hours later, when Anthony was already settled in his room, fed and resting, Omar went out to the hotel's top-floor terrace. New York stretched out. Before him, in all directions, millions of lights, millions of stories, millions of invisible lives waiting to be seen. Leo came out onto the terrace and stood next to him. 143, the boy said with a smile. "What? With Anthony? That makes 143 people." Omar smiled. "And there will be more." They remained there in silence, teacher and apprentice, savior and saved, united by a bond that transcended words. Finally, Leo spoke. "Mr. Omar, do you know what the most incredible thing about all this is?" "What?" "That you came to New York looking to disappear, looking to be invisible, and you ended up doing the exact opposite, helping others to be seen." Omar closed his eyes. The boy was right. He had come to New York fleeing his old life, seeking anonymity, and instead he had found his true purpose. "Sometimes," Omar said softly, "getting lost is the only way to truly find yourself." The night wind blew gently, carrying the scent of flowers from the nearby parks. Below, the city continued its eternal rhythm, taxis passing, people laughing on the terraces, music filtering from the bars, pure, simple, beautiful life. And Omar Al-Farsi, who had once owned 64 properties and 40,000 employees, who had dined with kings and flown in private jets, who had been betrayed and shattered and rebuilt, knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he needed to be. Not in a palace, not in a boardroom, not at the top of an empire, but here, in this simple hotel, surrounded by people who had been invisible and were now shining, making a real, tangible, human difference. "Leo," he finally said, "do you know what the true measure of a life well lived is?" "What?" "It's not how much money you accumulate. It's not how much power you possess. It's not how many people know your name." He paused. "It's how many lives you touch. How many people are better because you existed. How much love you leave behind when you go." Leo nodded, absorbing every word. "And by that standard," Omar continued, looking up at the stars barely visible above the city glow, "these last 2 years have been the richest of my life." He turned to the boy who had changed everything. "Thank you, Leo, for seeing me when no one else did." Leo smiled, tears shining in his eyes. "Thank you, Sir Omar, for teaching me that kindness always pays off. Always." And there, on that terrace under the New York sky, the Sheikh, who had lost everything, and the street kid, who had never had anything, shared a moment of perfect understanding. They had saved each other, and together they were saving the world, one invisible person at a time.